Doesn't matter if you're anchored up behind St. Paul or working in the storm, there's risks involved in this. Jacob's officially not tying any carriage bends anymore after we had that one knot slip and lost a pod. We've never dealt with illegal fishing boats this deep into American waters before.
Just like every other day, the Wizard crew was on the boat, desperately trying to meet their crab goal, when something unexpected happened. This unprecedented event would lead to the Wizard crew discovering a very big catch that has never been seen on the show. What happened at sea? How big was their catch? Join us as we delve deeper into how the Wizard crew discovered $1 million in crab during the deadliest catch. The Wizard strikes gold. Captain Keith Colburn and his crew were struggling to meet their quota of $250,000 worth of bear-eye crabs. After retrieving only a quarter of their target catch from the tanks, Keith knew they needed to take action fast. With pots coming back empty, he realized the crab hotspot had likely shifted, leaving them far out in the American Ocean without a reliable source of crabs. Determined not to return home empty-handed, Keith decided to conduct a tank check TC to assess the situation.
Oh, man. So this is a pretty lose-lose scenario.
Keith summoned Monty, the relief captain, to take over the helm while he went down to inspect the tanks. After thoroughly examining the tanks and their contents, Keith returned to the bridge with a new strategy in mind. He had identified a potential new hotspot for the crabs based on his observations. Keith immediately relayed his findings to the crew with renewed hope, and they set course for the new location, hoping to turn their fortunes around and secure the remaining 3/4 of their lucrative quota before time ran out. The captain was still trying to find the best spot for fishing, so he decided to start from the bottom of the ocean and work their way up until they found the ideal location. He instructed the rest of the crew to set off the fishing pots in 3/4 of a mile, letting them know that they would have the best chances of catching fish there. After observing the remaining deckhands struggling to achieve their goal, the captain acknowledged that the workload had been too much for them to handle alone. He called for a simple gathering and informed the crew that they needed additional hands on deck. As a result, he reinstated the previously fired deckhand to work again. Keith told Jacob that if he wanted to continue working on the ship, he had to start listening to his orders. Jacob accepted his mistake and apologized to Keith and the crew, asking if he could help the guys out, in which Keith accepted his apology, and the whole crew resumed fishing once more. Keith hopes Jacob can do what he asked of him, because a member can only get 3 strikes to be fired, and he already has 2. He hopes he becomes a member of the Wizard. Jacob decided to make a change and join the crew. The entire team returned to fishing at the spot Keith said would be their best location for working together.
Come on, crab. Let's see what we got here.
They offloaded the largest group of crabs they had seen all season, with an impressive count of 234 crabs. The whole crew felt delighted with the excellent result. Keith felt very satisfied with the abundant catch. He felt especially happy that Jacob made the right choice to collaborate with the crew. Keith believed teamwork and not working alone were the keys to success. Working together as a team is the only way they can accomplish their goals and thrive. Regardless of all the misunderstanding and challenges, the Wizard crew's determination led them to another great fishing trip. Wizard crew catches $282,000 worth of crab. Despite equipment challenges, the Wizard crew is determined to reach its crab goal after the first pot they pulled was filled with crabs. This excites the crew members. They release the second pot into the ocean, and that came back up filled with crabs. The whole crew couldn't stop smiling because of the excitement. The weather started to change. Jacob tied the pots down tight so they could be safe, because the weather might worsen later, and if the pots are not tied down properly, and they might get thrown into the ocean, or worse, injure someone. As expected, the weather changed for the worse, so Keith told the crew to move the pots to a different place to be safer, but it has been tied down well by Jacob. The crew went back to fishing for crabs, and luckily they kept getting pots full. It seemed like their lucky day, because they had passed their target with tanks brimming a total 170 pot stack. Captain Keith fights for a safe dock and 45-knot winds. With over months-long effort on sea, Captain Keith bags 50,000 pawns and $282,000 worth of crab, earning each deckhand $15,000. The crew has been lucky enough to hit the jackpot on multiple occasions, but there are moments when the challenges overwhelmed them. Giant ice weighs down the Wizard. Captain Keith Colburn navigated the Wizard into treacherous waters, approaching the Russian border dangerously. The crew is running out of time to save the ship from approaching calamity because it is entirely covered in ice. This location is set some 560 miles northwest of Dutch Harbor, in an isolated area where the only radio traffic is distant Russian talk. In an attempt to find more crabs, Captain Keith makes the risky decision to venture into these freezing, unsafe seas. However, by doing so, they put themselves in danger of entering unfriendly territory, where possessing a passport won't get them very far if things go wrong. The Wizard's journey into these uncharted waters is not without danger.
Roll the old dog on this one. Whoa, 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 whoa.
The ship becomes dangerously top-heavy due to all the ice buildup, with an estimated extra weight of 50 to 80,000 pounds in the front. This is a potentially dangerous situation. The boat struggles to handle the waves and begins to fill with water. This heavy load of ice threatens to replicate past disasters in which ships ended up at the bottom of the ocean. Captain Keith, fully aware of the imminent danger, addresses his crew with a sense of urgency. They need to take immediate steps to shed some of this dangerous weight. The Mage is practically encased in ice, so lightening the load is crucial. The work ahead of the crew is quite difficult. First, there's the massive 4-foot-thick coating of ice covering the deck to deal with. For the ship to remain stable and safe, this coating of ice must be removed. It's a race against time. The crew starts to clear the ice as they set out on this risky expedition to break and remove the ice, and they quickly understand how big of a challenge this is. The typically 800-pound crab traps are suddenly carrying 3,000 to 4,000 pound loads of ice, making them heavy and difficult to operate. Nature is not the only force that this crew has to face. This time they went face to face with poachers who tried to steal their catch. The Wizard fends off trespassers. Captain Keith Colburn and the Wizard's team were out fishing with the Aleutian Lady. They were shocked when an unfamiliar ship appeared to be poaching on their waters. This unknown vessel tailed them, refusing to leave. The crew knew they had to act quickly to secure their valuable haul. Keith and Rick wanted to drop their pots, but that plan halted after spotting the suspicious ship on radar. It wasn't broadcasting its position via AIS, an immediate red flag. They realized this boat might not be playing by the rules. Captain Keith suspects this ship's motives. He thinks it may be fishing illegally or up to something shady. Captain Keith and Rick hatch a plan. They'll head west at 7 knots, keeping their AIS system on. This will confuse the ship and create distance. Keith hopes to outsmart his pursuer. To further avoid the suspected illegal ship, they turn off their AIS system. Now their ship is invisible to tracking systems. The crew hopes this helps them escape the pursuer's radar. They want to put some distance between them. The crew is facing a risky situation with illegal fishing boats in their waters. They are setting crab traps while keeping watch for the intruders. Illegal fishing gear gets caught in their traps, showing that someone is fishing there without permission. Captain Keith and his team have never dealt with illegal boats this far into American waters before. To protect their crab catch and livelihood, they decide to patrol the area. Their goal is to stop the illegal boat from interfering with their fishing team and operations.
Set a bunch of strings and charge back to get the rest of the gear. And start our season. I think we've had enough practice.
The crew remains determined to safeguard their territory against this new threat. The crew felt worried when they saw a suspicious ship coming near again. They switched off all lights so the other ship could not spot them. The crew kept watching the approaching ship very closely. As a final attempt, they fired some warning shots to scare the intruder away. The shots worked, and the suspect ship hurriedly retreated during this unfortunate situation. Although the team was able to wade off the smugglers on other occasions, the problem became just too much for them. Unexpected fire breaks out on the Wizard. A fire that unexpectedly breaks out in the cooking room in Deadliest catch adds a dangerous twist to the already challenging circumstances aboard the Wizard, making his battles in the Bering Sea even more tough. When the crew members notice smoke in the kitchen at the start of the scene, they realize something is wrong. They rush to see where the smoke is coming from because they can smell something burning so strongly. As they attempt to find out what's going on, tensions increase. A crew member, Roger, comes over to take charge of the situation, grabs a fire extinguisher, and rushes to put out the fire. The crew's quick thinking and immediate response help prevent the fire from getting worse. They manage to control the flames and appear to have it under control. However, their relief is mixed with the realization that this incident could have been much worse. The crew knew fires on fishing boats are risky, especially in small places like kitchens. They found the 30-year-old heater had an electrical problem that caused the fire. Old equipment like the cadet heater can be dangerous, and similar heaters have started ship fires before. The crew remained calm despite the scare. After putting out the fire, they looked at what happened. To prevent future fires, they decided to check the wiring. Their actions showed their skill and care for safety. As the fire threat diminishes, they begin to discuss their fishing plans, mentioning the possibility of working near Balnearia, Russia, a region they had hoped to avoid. However, their successful fishing experience there the previous year greatly influenced his decision-making process. Fire and ice are not the only forces of nature to have punished this team at sea. Surviving the uncontrollable wave. The icy waters of the Bering Sea are known for their treacherous waves and unforgiving winds. In this intense scene from Deadliest Catch, Captain Keith Colburn and his crew on board the Wizard find themselves facing a perilous situation. The scene opens with towering 25-foot waves crashing against the vessel and howling 40-knot winds threatening to push them off course.
Broadside to 25-foot seas. Captain Keith Colburn fights his way to the top of his stream.
Despite the challenging conditions, Captain Keith remains determined to retrieve the crab traps and meet his quota. With unwavering resolve, Captain Keith places his faith in the strategic placement of the traps, believing they will lead to a successful and safe catch. His bold plan involves a daring maneuver. He positions the ship sideways to the wind, using the wave wall on the left side as a protective barrier. This calculated move allows the Wizard to sail forward, navigating the treacherous waters while minimizing the risk of being overwhelmed by the powerful waves. As the vessel cuts through the churning sea, Captain Keith and his crew must work tirelessly to bring in the traps, their efforts fueled by the promise of a bountiful harvest. The crew members' brilliant tactic allows their boat to effortlessly glide along the line of crab pots as they haul them in, ensuring everyone's safety and the continuation of their fishing operations. These daring individuals are fearless, expressing their excitement and enthusiasm with big smiles and cheers as they approach the first pot. Captain Keith skillfully lets the 155-foot vessel be carried towards the bay by strong gusts of wind, making a risky but well-calculated decision to cooperate with the powerful forces of the vast ocean rather than resisting them in a futile battle. They successfully retrieve the first crab pot with ease, and the crew's excitement and positivity are truly evident and contagious as they move on to the next pot. Despite the challenging circumstances of unpredictable winds and waves, they collaborate seamlessly as a team and rapidly stack the heavy crab pots onto the deck with impressive efficiency. Their camaraderie, determination, and problem-solving skills are truly remarkable, allowing them to overcome any obstacle that comes their way with unwavering resilience and a can-do attitude. Even though the weather was not good, the crew kept working hard. However, the big waves kept splashing onto the deck, making a mess and causing danger. The crew members stood firm against the waves, showing how committed they were to their work. At this difficult time, Captain Keith understood that the risk was now too high. As the waves became even bigger and rougher, Captain Keith had to make the hard decision to stop trying. The safety of the crew was the most important thing, and he knew that continuing in these bad conditions would be very risky. It was a disappointing moment, but keeping the crew safe was the top priority. The Wizard would definitely not have made it through these years without its leader and crew members. Let's take a look at the team. The Fleet Captain. Wizard Captain Keith Colburn is perhaps the most successful self-made crabber in the fleet. He's known for his fiery temper, tendency toward the remarkable, and capacity to fill huge quotas. While the majority of captains and crew members learned how to crab through family ties, Colburn, who was 22 years old at the time, chose in 1985 to board a plane and travel to Kodiak, Alaska, in order to gain control of the Bering Sea.
We came up with nothing in our old hot spot.
Colburn was a real greenhorn when he started crabbing on the 135-foot Alaska Trader. As we have often witnessed on Deadliest Catch, the majority of greenhorns merely want to avoid being seasick long enough to suffer severe bodily, mental, and emotional harm. Colburn, however, immediately began to thrive, and in just 3 years, he became a full-share deckhand on none other than the Wizard. Colburn must love the Wizard, since as a deckhand, a first mate, and now owner-captain, he's been on that vessel for more than 30 years, and counting. Wherever he ranks on your list of favorite captains, there's no denying Colburn's ability to convey the life of a crabber while getting the job done. Keith Colburn revealed that in 1985, before that crabbing light bulb went on, he'd been working in a French restaurant since he was 14, and he'd risen to the rank of sous chef by the time he was 21. Living in Lake Tahoe, California, whenever Keith wasn't in the kitchen, he was hitting the slopes or just bumming around the lodge. His original goal was to become a chef, but after hearing about the possibilities of big money in the modern-day Wild West of Alaskan crab fishing from a guy in high school, he put that on hold. Ironically, his abilities in the kitchen helped him secure a spot on the Alaska Trader. He explained that I worked in Alaska for room and board for the first 6 weeks. When I first got on the boat, one of the things that kept me on the boat was being able to cook. According to Keith, the learning curve was steep since, for one thing, his nice French restaurant was never once sloshed around by 20-foot waves. Plus, he had to whip up a lot of grub in very little time, since every minute off deck was a minute the boat wasn't producing. Alaskan crab fishing took an unexpected turn in 2005. The industry changed from a derby approach, in which numerous independent vessels raced to catch crab, to the new individual fishing quota structure in order to control overfishing. This meant that smaller boats had to have larger quotas in order to even cover their expenses, while larger, more established boats were assigned quotas to fulfill. There were about 80 boats left in the fleet after this rationalization process, down from about 250. In order to guarantee a place among the remaining boats, Keith Colburn and his spouse and business associate, Florence, bought the Wizard from John Jorgensen in that particular year. They had no assurance that they would meet their quota. Thus, this was a dangerous decision. They trusted that the Wizard's size of 156 feet and Colburn's knack for filling it would be enough to secure that all-important quota. Captain Keith told the Discovery Channel, "There are crab vessels that are 165 feet, but what is unique to the Wizard is her capacity."
I was nervous about making this move with this gear, but I didn't have any options.
She holds over 400,000 pounds of crab in her tank. There are larger boats with more pots, but the Wizard holds the most crabs in the fleet. Keith and Florence Colburn's gamble paid off, as not only was the Wizard allotted quota, but their Opilio crab allocations ranked in the top 10, and their king crab ranked in the top 5 in the entire fleet. Running a ship isn't a child's play, and it needs all hands on deck. This next person is known for keeping the ship together. Relief Captain Monty Colburn. Just 2 years after his older brother Keith received crash training in crab fishing in the dead of winter off isolated St. Paul Island, Monty moved north. On the deck of the crabber Juno, a partnership to the Alaska Trader Keith was working on, Monty was first introduced to the Bering Sea. Before taking his first extended shore leave, Monty's first year in Alaska was a 10-month marathon. Ever since his first day in Alaska, Monty's career has been nothing but adventures. In 1988, he joined Sincere aboard the Wizard as a full-share deckhand. When Keith took over in the wheelhouse a few years later, Monty became deck boss. Monty earned his Coast Guard mate's license in 1992 and upgraded to a master's in 1995. By then, Keith and Monty began operating the Wizard full-time as captain and relief captain mate. For a time, Monty took command of a succession of his crab boats, allowing him to gain captain's experience and operate his boats in partnership with Keith aboard the Wizard. The brothers are often at odds on how things should be run, so look for tension on board. Though they differ, Keith has voiced full trust in Monty's ability, often noting that his brother is one of a few guys in the fleet with a master 1,600-ton captain's license. Having recently completed a $100,000 engine rebuild on the Wizard, Monty is eager for the season to begin. Though he might be the only person on the Wizard who can calm his wild brother, it's unclear how much independence Keith believes Monty has earned. Monty went out of bounds during the previous Beardy season, losing the Wizard money and effort. Monty escaped with only a modest fine, but Keith was able to make enough of a decision to prevent him from sitting in the captain's chair that he had his eye on. With remarkable experience in fishing, this crew member has been able to secure the spot as one of the most reliable deck bosses on the team, people on the ship, the tenacious deck boss. Gary has spent the majority of his life beside the sea. He started fishing at a young age after moving to Alaska as a youngster. Gary, Captain Keith's most dependable crew member, is tough and knowledgeable on the deck. Gary, also known as Soper, is a full-time professional crabber who presently holds the positions of first mate and deck boss on the ship.
All right, let's catch some crab.
First one's coming up.
Soper has worked for the Wizard for more than 20 years. He had started out working with Keith and Monty as a deckhand. More recently, he has taken over as the captain of the deck and drives the boat at night when the Wizard works non-stop. In addition, he oversees and maintains the deck and the crab pots. A bit grizzled and quiet, Soper is the consummate fisherman. He wears tattoos of a tall ship on one arm and an anchor on the other. Captain Keith sees the anchor as symbolic of what Soper represents on board, a solid, dependable team player who has helped build the business with unwavering dedication. The grizzled and hardened hand is known for his relentless hazing of greenhorns and his propensity for the occasional dirty joke. As a mainstay on the Wizard, Soper receives the entire crew's respect. He's not sure if Keith will hand over the helm to Monty this season, but he does prefer Monty's laid-back management style. Expect another tireless season on deck, accompanied by the dry quips and commentary this deck boss is known for. As a longtime crew member and friend, Gary is part of the Wizard's heart and soul. With lots of passion and enthusiasm, the next crew member has also made herself one of the most important people in the Wizard boat, Kelvin Stafford Deckman. Young and driven, Kevin works as a deckhand and has experience in many fisheries. Prior to the 2011 Opelio season, he had not yet had any time spent on a crab boat. Kevin had joined Keith's crew and had also been on a crabbing boat, much like Roger. The captain took a fancy to the horn and complimented Kevin right away for learning the ins and outs of crabbing so rapidly. Kevin, with his 28-foot yacht and his claim to fame and legitimacy, is a man of the sea, traveling alone to Polynesia. His position with Captain Keith and the Wizard crew rose as a result of his achievement and his aptitude for quick learning. This year will be Kevin's third stint on the Wizard. He's a tough worker who looks forward to seeing the crew, but just wants to grind out the season to earn a living. Ever the professional fisherman, he works away through the crab season to live a secluded life, hunting and fishing salmon. He recently applied for his captain's license, but Kevin claims he'll keep any long-term goals off the Wizard's deck. However, watch for competition between Roger and Kevin as they fiercely desire to climb the ranks. Since the first time on the boat, this person has proven himself and has been acknowledged by the captain himself as one of the hands needed on the water. Freddie Mwagatai Deckman. Since joining the Wizard, Freddie has seamlessly meshed with the stout crew. The first one on deck and the last one to leave, this Samoan stud's work ethic is exactly what Captain Keith wants in a deckhand.
Might take a wave or two here during this haul.
Eat your candy bars or your little protein packs. It's gonna be a long day.
Though that doesn't mean Freddie is a no-nonsense guy himself. A former hand on the Cornelia Marie, Freddie brings positive energy to the Wizard crew, embodied by his cod blood bath ritual at the season's start and the mohawk haircuts he gives his fellow deckhands for good luck. Freddie wears his emotions on his sleeve, and his attitude is a good barometer for the mood on deck. He's known to be particularly harsh on greenhorns, but for the most part, Freddie has a fun-loving attitude that helps alleviate any stress on the Wizard's deck. Freddie knows his captains and figures Keith will hand over the helm at least once to his younger brother Monty. Freddie's good nature jives naturally with Monty's more laid-back attitude. Look to Freddie for great positive moments on deck. As a newbie without any experience, this person was able to print his name down as one of the important people on the team. Roger Schlossstein Deckman. When Roger joined the Wizard as a greenhorn during the record-setting 2012 Opie's season, he manned the bait station efficiently and quickly proved himself a self-motivator on deck. He even received a rare attaboy from Keith over the hailer for his excellence on deck and earned himself a 0.5% raise in just 6 days. Roger worked as a salmon fisher before joining Keith's crew, but his most valuable asset isn't his experience, it's his attitude. He earned a coveted Wizard jacket at the end of the season, a sign that Keith sees Roger as a long-term guy for his company. With the ability to work the rail, count crabs and help in the engine room, Roger has earned the full respect of the crew over the past 2 years. Last summer, Roger spent 2 months with Lenny and the mechanics on the Wizard rebuilding the engine. The Wizard's usually disagreeable engineer, Lenny, has taken Roger under his wing and trained him in the engine room every time there's been a breakdown. As Lenny ages, Roger wants to learn more and eventually take over when the veteran retires. He looks forward to this year's King season and remains prepared for the icy grind of Opie's. Roger's hard work and excellent attitude have made him a respected member of the Wizard crew. Captain Keith Colburn built $1 million business out of his final $50. Keith rode his luck and developed the Wizard into one of the most powerful vessels in the fleet during World War II. But some costs come with every win and every sacrifice. What do you think about the Wizard catch? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more interesting videos. Thanks for watching.